Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Discussions. On today's episode, today's going to be a bit of a shorter episode. I do apologize in advance for that. Um, but today's episode is going to contain last night's NXT results as well as tonight's AEW match card predictions. Now, starting with NXT now. As you all know, if you've seen my previous videos in terms of NXT stuff, I usually just cover the titles. Now, last night we did finally learn who's going to be the final tag team to join the Fatal 4-Way match at Vengeance Day this Saturday, and it is going to be Chase U. Now, obviously, this is an interesting choice because I believe Duke Hudson is his name. Duke Hudson and Andre Chase have been little on the outs, right? Like, these two have different personalities, different styles, that sort of thing. And this could definitely affect them in some way, shape, or form. On top of that, you already have Pretty Deadly in the match as well as Gallus. Now, Pretty Deadly, they are in a very great position right now, I think, in NXT, because honestly, I think they're a very entertaining tag team. And I do think that here, sooner or later, they'll be brought up to the main roster and put into something a little bit bigger, as will Gallus, is my hope, because Gallus is, I think, a very impressive tag team. And my only unfortunate thing with them is that they're only just now coming into NXT from NXT UK, and so which is like the developmental before the developmental, you know? And so they've got a lot that they've got to work up to, which is unfortunate because I think they've earned that already. I think they've earned that right to go to the main roster already. And on top of that, you've obviously got the New Day themselves, who are, there to push all these wrestlers and there to help out all these wrestlers. And that, that's very helpful. That makes a lot of sense. All that being said, though, like I said last night, I really thought the final team was going to be AOP. Turns out it's not. However, this doesn't mean we won't see AOP. Vengeance Day is this Saturday. We could very well see AOP then. There's also a big possibility we're going to see William Regal. And so all that is very possible, very probable going into Vengeance Day. And so, kind of just stay tuned, kind of be prepared and ready for it. Now, in terms of the NXT Women's Championship, we did hear from Roxanne Perez, and Roxanne Perez is pretty much tired of Toxic Attraction, and so this is interesting in the sense that this is a bit of long-term storytelling. Roxanne and Toxic Attraction obviously kind of been feuding since Roxanne first came to NXT, and Roxanne has every reason to dislike Toxic Attraction. She has every reason to want to beat Toxic Attraction and to want to retain her title against Toxic Attraction. On top of that, though, in Toxic Attraction's mind, if you're in their perspective, they have every reason to want to beat Roxanne Perez. They have every reason to want to take the title away from Roxanne Perez. Again, I think this is mainly going to come down to who wants it more, as well as the friendship that Gigi Dolan and JC Jane have. Because if they do this right, and they decide to maybe end Toxic Attraction once and for all at Vengeance Day, they could make this into a Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano rivalry. They could make this into a Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox rivalry, if it is done correctly, if it is done properly. And I very much so hope that it is done properly, because I think both of these women's wrestlers are wrestlers that are almost prospects for that of the main roster due to the time they spent in the main roster once or twice. And I think if they were to do some sort of street fight or some sort of really big match, I think it would very well help them, and they would very much so benefit from that. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the NXT Women's Tag Titles. Really quickly, because it seems to me as though Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are going to be working together here, and that's surprising, and it also makes me think these two could be a very potential tag team, because they're so dangerous separately, and on top of that, they're both so like-minded, and they both are so great singles wrestlers, and they're both very vital to the NXT Women's roster, to the point where I think if they were to be put in tag team action, I think they would be a very unstoppable team. I think they'd be a very unstoppable team, especially if they were to win the NXT Women's Tag titles. I think the titles would very well benefit from that, as would the Women's Tag division down in NXT. Now, I also want to get into the North American Championship. So Dijak and Wesley, they've been facing off. They've been going face to face here a lot. Dijak, obviously, fighting. He was in a match last night. I believe it was against. I forget his name. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. If I remember, I'll say it later. But he was in a match. Obviously got the win, and that's going to be interesting going into this with Wesley. And I've said it once, I'll say it again. Dijak, if anyone deserves the North American Championship, it's Dijak. And so I'm really hoping that Shawn Michaels and NXT, I'm really hoping they do this correctly and they give Dijak the win and the title. Now, last but not least for NXT, the NXT Championship, Grayson Waller and Braun Breaker, these two have been developing such a huge rivalry. They're finally facing off this Saturday, which I'll give a full predictions and full breakthrough on Saturday's episode. But it's so big to see these two go at it because their first match was so intense. Their first match was amazing. And Grayson Waller and Braun Breaker, the idea of a steel cage is so intriguing. And the rivalry that they've been building up these past couple of weeks with the mind games and with the arguing and the back and forth fighting, I don't think I've ever seen anyone get inside the head of Braun Breaker and also come out practically unscathed on multiple occasions. I mean, there have been a lot of occasions that I've been seeing here lately that he's honestly really hurt Breaker. And that's dangerous for Braun in his title reign. And I mean, Braun Breaker's getting closer and closer to having that title for a whole year. And so they are probably going to want to have him drop it very soon. And who else to drop it to than Grayson Waller? Like, Grayson Waller is a great choice, right? And so I don't think there should be any shame in Grayson Waller potentially beating Braun Breaker. I would love to see Grayson Waller be NXT World Champion just because I think it would be that much more entertaining. And I think on top of that, with, the idea of the draft potentially coming back after WrestleMania, I think Breaker would very much so benefit from that. I think a lot of wrestlers down in NXT would benefit from that if they went back to like the idea of drafting 4 NXT superstars in total, like 2 throughout Monday Night Raw and 2 throughout SmackDown. I think a lot would benefit from that. I would love to see, or is it 8? I think it might be 8. I think it's 4 per brand. I forget. But either way, I would love to see a bunch of new wrestlers, new faces in Raw and SmackDown. I'd love to see Braun Breaker finally go to the main roster. I'd love to see maybe Cora Jade go up to the main roster at some point if she was, a lucky chosen one. Maybe Alba Fire and Isla Dawn could go up. I think there would be a number of potential superstars that could go up. I think the Creed brothers would be a great pick. All in all, I think anyone and everyone in NXT would be a interesting choice and a viable option. If I gotta be completely honest with you, one that I really would like to see if he is, able to compete in time, I would love to see Ilya Dragunov come back and go for the main roster. And even if not the main roster, I'd love to see him maybe come back and go on the even on NXT and maybe take the title from someone. Either way, I just want to see Ilya Dragunov be a champion in something. I want to see him really, come up in something right now because Ilya Dragunov is an incredible athlete, incredible wrestler. He's one of my favorites. To be quite honest with you, and so I would love to see more out of him. So that would be very entertaining, very interesting. Now, moving on away from NXT, going to tonight's AEW, the match card for tonight. Now, we do have a pretty big match card ahead. Tonight's episode taking place in Ohio. We've got Darby Allin versus Samoa Joe for the TNT Championship. Now, I'm going to start with this. I've said this before. Darby Allin, in my opinion, is not the best candidate as TNT champion right now, in the sense that I think he's a great TNT champion, but I wasn't expecting them to end Samoa Joe's title reign so soon. I wasn't expecting them to have it end via Darby Allin. And everything being said, I think Samoa Joe deserves a match. I think he deserves a rematch. I think he deserves the TNT title back because Darby kind of got his opportunity at defending it once a week, once a week, once a week. And so I'd like to see Samoa Joe get it back, become a 2-time TNT champion. And I mean, it's not like it's been unheard of. Cody Rhodes has done it. Sammy Guevara did it multiple occasions. Scorpio Sky did it at one point. You win, you lose, you win it back. It happens. We've seen it before with the TNT title. So, all that being said, I'm going to simply say this right now, hands down. My prediction for this one is going to be Samoa Joe. I think Samoa Joe deserves the TNT title a little bit more than Darby Allin. I think the idea of Darby Allin winning the TNT title is smart, but I also think they really screwed it up the way they did it. It should have been, much more build up. I think Tony Khan really screwed the pooch on it. And so I'm going to say Samoa Joe. I think they kind of need a reset. They need Samoa Joe as TNT champion. They need to bring in some other prospects of who could potentially take the title away from Joe. And, maybe put Darby in a different contendership, right? Like, with MJF as the world champion right now, they could really do something with that. Or like I could really see it at Double or Nothing this year. I could really see MJF taking on Darby Allin for the AEW World Championship. Or I could see even going down to All Out or something. I don't know. I would just really like to see them have something go on between those two at some point. On top of that, we're going to get Jon Moxley versus Hangman Adam Page 3. Now, this is a really, really tough one for me to decide. Moxley has a victory. Hangman has a victory. This is a really tough one for me to decide because this is such an intense rivalry at this point. And on top of that, the fact that this is as long as it's been, right? My prediction is neither. My prediction is going to be a draw. I say that because March 5th is Revolution, and we're officially on February 1st. And so, what they could do if they decide to do this is they could finally take this from now, and they could maybe potentially do a 2 out of 3 falls match at Revolution. They could do something. I was originally going to say an Iron Man match, but that wouldn't work because they're already going to do, most likely, an Iron Man match between Bryan Danielson and MJF, unless they want to make that their highlight and say, we're going to have 2 big Iron Man matches. But personally, I don't think that would be the way to go. But I'm still going to stick with my prediction of saying Jon Moxley versus Hangman is going to be a draw. Just because I really can't decide who's going to win and who's going to lose that. Moxley's a great talent. Hangman's a great talent. Both wrestlers, I think, could win. I really think... I think either one could be justified to win. And so it's really hard for me to decide on that one. So I got to go with a draw. Now, here's another one. Bryan Danielson versus Timothy Thatcher. Now, as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure Timothy Thatcher is signed to New Japan, I think. Or somewhere in Japan. But he's coming down to AEW to fight Bryan Danielson, which is interesting. I personally, myself, have not seen nor heard of Timothy Thatcher since NXT. And I'm a little disappointed to see that WWE hasn't picked him back up. But seeing him down in AEW take on Bryan Danielson, I think that'll certainly be an entertaining match. These two are both so talented with their submissions, their technical ability in the ring. I would love to see these two just have a big throwdown of a technician match in there and really kind of bring in the old style, you know what I mean? Their styles of wrestling. I'd love to see it. Now, prediction-wise, obviously I got to go with Bryan Danielson. It'll be a great match, but at the end of the day, obviously Bryan Danielson's going to get the win. Obviously they want, more wins for Bryan Danielson under his belt going into this potential match with MJF at Revolution in the Iron Man match for the AEW World Championship. And so, obviously, Bryan Danielson's going to get the win on that one. Now, we also have Konosuke Takeshita taking on Brian Cage. Now, this one surprises me the most. This one gets me out of my seat a little bit. Konosuke Takeshita is supposedly a potential candidate to join the Blackpool Combat Club. And he stood up for Danielson. He took on Cage last week and MJF last week, to kind of fend them off against Danielson. And it's really interesting to me. I really think that, prediction-wise, I gotta go with Konosuke Takeshita. And I'm grateful to finally say that for once, because Konosuke Takeshita deserves an opportunity. He deserves a win. And I want to see him start getting properly built up more. I want to see him start getting utilized more. Especially now with, we haven't really seen Claudio Castagnoli be used anymore. Same with Wheeler Yuta. We haven't even really seen him be used much anymore. Like, anyone that is in Ring of Honor at this point is not utilized. They're not shown properly, and it's getting really, really annoying. Hint, hint, Tony Khan. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, yeah, my prediction for that's going to be Konosuke Takeshita. For obvious reasons. Brian Cage is a great wrestler, but I can't think of a Dynamite that he's actually won. And I think this is a great opportunity to finally put over the tremendous talent that is Konosuke Takeshita. Now, we're also going to see Jade Cargill versus Red Velvet. Listen, as much as I want to say Red Velvet, like, storyline-wise, this would make sense if it was Red Velvet, just because these two have had such an intense rivalry from day one that it would make sense to finally give Red Velvet a bit of a win and maybe build that up a little bit. But honestly, at this point, let's be honest. If Red Velvet were to win, she's lost to Jade Cargill like 3 separate times. If Red Velvet were to win at this point, the fans would riot. And so, prediction-wise, I gotta go with Jade Cargill, because it's just getting bland. It's getting stupid. Nobody wants to see Red Velvet beat Jade Cargill. It wouldn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I gotta go with Jade. And finally, our last thing, we're going to see the Acclaimed in action. Now, again, we know what this means. This obviously means they're fighting nobodies. And so, I'm going to say it straight up. We are going to see the Acclaimed win. That's my prediction. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for tonight's episode. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.